All right, so I'm back at it again today. We've got our monochromatic SketchUp model. It's all pretty well detailed out with doors and windows and looks pretty good, but it's lacking color. We need to breathe some life into this SketchUp model with some materials and textures. So we're probably going to head over to SketchUpTextureClub.com. That's a great resource, super inexpensive, great resource for SketchUp materials. And then also we're going to use Valley Instant Cladding to add some kind of 3D relief to our board and batten siding. So anyway, let's get to it. All right, so let's take a look again, just to kind of recap. We need to get some siding here, and then we've got our board and batten up top. And, we can see kind of some maybe aluminum on the garage, and we've got also like this trim color happening, some brick. So we do have a little bit of work to do, some shingles. We got to track down some good materials for all of these different textures, or to find some textures for the materials more so. All right, so one thing that you can do to kind of jumpstart the process, this is not all bad, but I don't typically use these textures all that much, is if I select like a handful of these textures, I might find like some brick too. Like this is a good example. This is a good example. What we're going to do is select 3 surfaces that have a good example of the material that we are using. So like this brick, I might use that as well. All right, so let's just select those 3. And then over here on my match photo dialog, I can click on project textures from photo like that. And now this trim partially visible faces, I'm going to say no. What that means is like if the face that I selected is kind of hidden by another face, like my guess is it's like this area right here. What it would do is it would kind of like project a line onto that surface to divide it so that you don't get this kind of weird texture happening. I don't know. Anyway, experiment with it. For the most part, I say no. Sometimes it can come in handy, but in this case, we say no. Now, watch this. I'm going to orbit. Look at that. So now we've got a couple of textures on our model. Now I can tell you that these are, it's pretty unlikely that these are going to be the textures that we'll end up using, but it's kind of a good first rip at getting this model textured and just getting it kind of set in place. And then we'll see if these textures don't work out, then we'll head over to our SketchUp Texture Club. .com and download some other textures, but this at least helps you get going and get a feel for what you're going to need. And if you don't have the time or don't have SketchUp Texture Club, you can sometimes make these things work. So anyway, what I typically do is like draw a rectangle around a chunk of texture that looks good. And so for instance, on this one, I might bring this down like that, so it's kind of below that shadow line, and then you can see down here it's certainly above the shadow line. And then if I right click on just this texture alone, right click and choose make unique texture, watch what happens. And let me explain a little bit more about what's going to happen. Let's open up our materials library, and if I sample this material, you can see that this piece of material, it's actually that photograph. If I like right click and go to texture position, you can see it's just that whole photograph. And that's what it's pulling that piece of texture from. And it's all kind of skewed around properly because of that match photo process. But watch what happens, all right? When I right click and choose make unique texture and then sample it, see how it just made this chunk into one complete texture? Well now, if I sample that, I can then apply it. And so now I can kind of get rid of this stuff. And, you can see that maybe I could have done a little bit better on my seams. But then I can go around and I can start applying this texture. And at a bare minimum, I've got like a clean representation of it. And then also I have, all of my model being textured so that when I do get the texture I want, it's real easy to swap it out. All right, so that's usually the approach I take. I'll right click here, go to texture position, and maybe I'll try and like skew it just a notch to get it kind of going more vertical. Hit enter. And then I'll use my rectangle tool again, and I'll draw like maybe, maybe this is going to be good enough. See, it's not it's not quite vertical, so we might just skew it. All right, so I'm going to right click on this and choose make unique texture, and then I'll sample that texture and then paint it on the rest. And then watch this trick. Right click, texture, position, and then I'll just set this like, in the bottom right corner down here, which, yeah, I gotta actually see that surface like that. And then I can use my, what is this one called? This is their scale and shear. And I can just stretch that whole thing straight up like that. And so that will give me a nice clean board and batten look. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Maybe I'll take like right click, texture, position, and let's see, I think this one kind of needs to be skewed like that. It's really kind of difficult to work with these. Of course, you can always send them over to Photoshop too. But for this one, I'm going to draw a rectangle and just collect, again, like a good sampling of this material and make unique texture, sample that material, and then I can apply it. So now it goes here, 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 and here. And, I'll just throw it on top. That's fine. And like that. All right, and then we'll do the same thing over here where we just grab like a chunk of brick. I call this like this is like a geo model versus what we're kind of getting it to is like a render ready model. All right, so make unique texture and like that, taking that chunk of brick, and this would certainly render well. It would look good, but I just want to show you this technique, and then we'll probably take a stab at getting this thing all done up with really nice textures, because this is a rendering project. All right, so we'll just kind of keep going on these guys and turn the corner here. What do we have happen there? Get rid of that and apply some of these. What is this? A soldier course around the side here, and like that. And I'm holding Alt. I think that's Alt is Command on the Mac, I think, and so that's what allows you to sample. So I'm using my model as the palette and sampling and then applying it. All right, so that's in good shape. Let's see what else. I think this was board and batten there. If you like this video, click the BD button to subscribe to our channel. Every week we post new videos covering SketchUp, Layout, Lumion, and our Condoc Tools extension. If you are a professional architect or interior designer, you are going to love our tutorials.